the way that I see the world is that if you optimize your biology and your physical metabolic health, you have more energy. If you optimize your psychology and your relationships with your parents, your partners, yourself, you have greater psychology. You have greater connection. You have connection to you have connection to others. And that connection is either good or bad and positive or negative, and it's either giving you life or it's taking life away from you. The third piece of the puzzle that I haven't really fully until now really fully understood, which is there's something much greater than you, and there's something much bigger than us. And this concept of transcendence and quote unquote enlightenment is literally about how can I shine as much light and free up as much energy in my existence.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion, and I'm excited to have back on the show Dr. Molly Maloof. Dr. Molly provides health optimization and personalized medicine to high-achieving entrepreneurs, investors, and technology executives. For 3 years, she taught a pioneering course on health spam in the wellness department of the Medical School of Stanford University before launching her own company, Adamo Bioscience. The vision of our company is to demonstrate that love is measurable, modifiable, and a key factor in healing. She is pioneering a new sex therapy program and envisions a future where psychedelic assisted sex therapy is a pathway to resolve sexual dysfunction, strengthen relationship bonds, and improve sexual health. In this episode, we talked about how phenomenal she looks, even though she just had a breakup. I saw her before, I saw her today, and there was some shift, some like a different light, a different aura that was surrounding her. And she said that she's been through a spiritual evolution. She has been studying with Sadhguru and taking a lot of his trainings, and that shifted her to a place of having what she describes as a second Kundalini awakening. So we talked about Kundalini and what it means, and what it means to have a Kundalini awakening and how to channel it. We also talked about how she is helping people with sexual dysfunctions through her sexual therapy program, and how she believes that one day, when it's FDA approved, we can actually heal people with psychedelics like MDMA. Funny enough, MDMA street name is Molly, and she's Dr. Molly. I think it's a very fun coincidence. Um, it is not approved yet, but maybe one day in the future. In any ways, she's very hard driven, and this was a fun conversation. I wish we had more time. I'm going to invite her back on the show because she's so phenomenal. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Molly, and welcome back to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Orion. This is awesome.
Yes. So last time we spoke more about biohacking and life hacking, and I want to focus today more about your evolution when it comes to uh, relationship, spirituality, keeping the enlightenment alive, or because when we get like before we spoke, you told me about people try new things and they get to the top of the mountain, but it's not sustainable, and you're going to teach us how to stay there. So maybe you can give me a little update on what's going on with you lately.
Well, I'm one of those weird people in the world that seems to always be living quite the adventure. And in the last 4 months, I had a very intense relationship that led me to moving to Jackson. And then we broke up. And then I moved into a cabin. And now you can see behind me, we're in a blizzard. And, in previous relationships where they were very deep and very intense, and when there was a breakup, I would be grieving for weeks, like really sad and like lots of grief. And the difference in this time is that I looked at the relationship as almost an initiation, and it led to a transformation in my consciousness that was truly profound, because even though this person and I didn't work out and there was quite a lot of pain and, some really big challenges near the end of it, he introduced me to the work of Sadhguru. And I had been on a path of, trying to help people optimize their health through teaching people about energy capacity and metabolism for like the last decade. And then the last 3 years, since 2021, I started a company called Adamo Bioscience, and it was about the science of love and human flourishing, and how does human connection improve health? How does healthy human connection lead to better health? And can we create products and services around human connection? So Adamo launched its first product, which is a clinical sex therapy platform designed to help couples optimize their intimacy. Now, having spent a lot of time on sort of the biological and then the psychosexual, which I really do fundamentally believe at a core level, like the reason for existence is largely to survive and reproduce. But there's something more than just creating energy and reproducing people, or maybe companies or art or whatever it is that we create, right? Like, what's beyond survival and reproduction? And I really got into the work of Maslow, and I really loved Maslow's hierarchy, because it's really about this concept of love and then self actualization and then transcendence. So, having actualized a life filled with incredible health since the last decade, I've optimized my health and frankly feel like I'm aging backwards, which is awesome.
Yeah, actually, and I comment on that. I told you that you look 10 years younger. Seriously. You look so beautiful. I was like you look beautiful before, but there is like I can totally see energetically something polarity, something shifted completely.
Yeah. So I worked on my biological health, and then I worked on my psychological health. And what I really learned was, like, fundamentally, if you want to be a happy person, you have to have good relationships. So I'm surrounded by community everywhere I go in the world, and I build community very quickly. Like, I've only been out of this relationship for 2 weeks and I already have like 20 friends. And like that's pretty fast to grow a friend, like a community, in no time. So I got really interested in like, what's beyond having great health and great community and having a sense of purpose? And I realized that, like, what I hadn't been really working on was my spirituality. So in the process of this relationship, I got introduced to Sadhguru's work, and I started slowly increasing my meditation and slowly increasing different spiritual practices, hatha yoga practices. And I also started, I was eating vegetarian for 4 months, which I did lose some weight, which honestly, I got a little too skinny, which was like not quite ideal, but maybe helpful in some ways. Like, eating a vegetarian diet and a fairly detoxifying diet is great for a good detox is good for everybody, you know? So I started eating a lot more fruits and vegetables, and I was eating a lot to begin with, but I do credit it to the when you let go of a relationship that is not serving you and you find yourself in a turning point in your life. And I basically said, I'm going to commit to doing what's called a mandala. And I went to these retreats in Tennessee. I did this retreat called Shunya, and that was followed by a retreat called Bhava Spandana. And prior to that, I had done Inner Engineering, which is an online program by Sadhguru. And that led to this thing called Shambhavi Mahamudra, which is a initiation practice. So I was doing Shambhavi off and on for like the last 40 days prior to those retreats. And then I also got trained in Hatha Yoga. So there's a lot of really interesting shifts that happened with me in the last few months. But when I went to the Shunya retreat, I was like blown away that it took 3 days of very intense yogic practices, like this thing called Surya Kriya, and then Shakti Shalana Kriya, which is a breathwork practice. It took 3 days of this in order for them to actually get you to the point where you can sit down and do a 15-minute, very simple meditation that's mantra based. And I have to say, like, I was kind of blown away by like how unbelievable it feels that like I've went through a breakup and I've developed such a deep sense of well-being that like everyone's like, how are you doing so well? And I'm like, I know, I literally, like, my whole life got turned upside down. I moved to a new town for a man. We broke up. And I've been doing this, this practice, Shakti Shalan Kriya and Shambhavi and Shunya and some Hatha yoga almost every day for like 1 to 3 hours a day, which is a lot of meditation and yoga. And most days is like an hour, but some days it's an hour and a half, some days it's 3 hours. And I basically committed to this path, regardless of the fact that my ex introduced it to me. I was really committed to, if I'm going to go and learn these practices and everyone tells me that they're going to change my consciousness, like, let's see what happens. So I'm a biohacker. And I thought to myself, people keep telling me that if I keep doing these practices, I'm going to find a level of well-being and fulfillment that I've never experienced before. And I have to say, like, it's been this weird upward trajectory of well-being and fulfillment that I was like not expecting. I was like, come on, there's no way that this stuff is actually going to like change my consciousness that rapidly. But I did this thing called Bhava Spandana. And, I asked myself in 2019, when I was at a MDMA conference at Esalen Institute. I asked the room, I said, is there something beyond psychedelics that maybe we're missing? Like, I know psychedelics can bring us to the top of the mountain, but like, you don't get to stay there. Like, I want to be in a state of ecstasy and bliss and compassion and love on like a daily basis. Like, I really want to just be there. How do I get there? And everyone's like, well, we don't know. And I was like, I think that's what's beyond the psychedelic movement, is like, there's something going to be on this movement. And I already had a prediction in 2019 that there was something beyond psychedelics. And whether you get there through Christianity, through Hinduism, through Buddhism, through spirituality, through Sadhguru, through nature, there is a desire for transcendence that everybody wants. Like, once you've gotten your security needs met, your relational needs met, your esteem needs met, you keep on searching for something more. Okay, now you got your self-actualization needs met. What's beyond that? And people don't realize that Maslow's hierarchy, transcendence was beyond that. It's like, what's beyond you? And I'm like, whoa, like, so I'm doing these. I went to this retreat called Bhava Spandana. And basically, they described it on the website as a complete overhaul of emotional energy. And I was like, sure, sure, that sounds nice. But in the process of going through the program, I experienced what I would call my second Kundalini awakening, where it was a absolute transformation of my consciousness that was like fairly intense. Like, I'm just going to say it out loud. Do not go do Bhava Spandana unless you want your whole life turned upside down, because that's what's going to happen. And mine happened in the middle of the Shunya and the Bhava Spandana retreats. Like, me and my boyfriend broke up while I was at these retreats. So I'm in this like totally unhinged place, right? Like, I am just like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to move? What am I going to do? I'm like freaking out, right? Like, do I go back to Austin? I've got a place in Austin, but I don't want to go back to Austin, because if I go back to Austin, I'm not going to do these practices. So I said, you know what? I'm going to commit to sitting in Jackson for at least the next 40 days. And I'm going to commit to doing these practices, and I'm going to see what happens. And in the last couple weeks, my well-being levels have just skyrocketed. And there's a lot of energy running through my body right now. Like, and if you read about Kundalini awakenings, they can be very destabilizing. But because I have these practices and a lineage that I'm following, every day that I sit on the mat and I do, Hatha yoga, I do Shakti Shalana Kriya, I do Shambhavi, and then I do Shunya twice in the afternoon.
Can you break it down for me? What is shunya? I've never heard about those things. What is Kundalini awakening?
So a Kundalini awakening is, there's this theory in like Eastern religions that you have a coiled amount of, there's basically like this energy that's in your body that you're not tapped into. And they believe it's like coiled at the base of your spine. And when you have a Kundalini awakening, it's like a full release of energy that causes shaking, that can cause extreme amounts of ecstasy and bliss, and can basically feel like you've been hit by a lightning bolt. Like, there's so much energy running through your nervous system that you're like, what the heck is going on right now? So the first time this happened to me, it was on accident. I had literally asked the universe for a taste of enlightenment, and it kicked me in the face with a spiritual awakening. And I was doing a lot of yoga. I was doing Ashtanga yoga at the time. I was doing HIIT training, weight training. I had a bad breakup as well. So sometimes breakups can be particularly good for your development. And I'd been doing a lot of mitochondrial, boosting exercises. Like I was really focused on like, how can I get as much energy out of my system as possible? I was like, what's possible for my physiology? And I like had done everything I wrote about in my book in like one weekend, right? I was doing HIIT training, weight training, sauna, meditation, human connection. Um, there was no sexual connection, but I was with a guy that I was into. And so there was a lot of energy flowing through me. And the first awakening happening in 2019. And I didn't have a lineage to follow. So it led to it can be very destabilizing if this thing happens to you. It's kind of like a very spiritual, but if you're not prepared, it can really lead to like your nervous system just feels like you have more energy flowing through you than you know what to do with. And if you're not grounded and stabilized in that energy and know how to harness it and ground it, then it can really be problematic for your mental health.
In Kabbalah, they call it expanding the vessel. It's like you gotta expand your vessel to receive all this light. And if you have all this light and the vessel is still restricted, that can be, I can see how it can be too much.
So I wasn't ready in 2019 and I wasn't prepared. And it led to me leaving the Bay Area and going to like 3 different 10-day meditation retreats in 6 months. Because I was just like, the only place I could feel normal was when I was meditating. And then the pandemic hit and things changed after that. And the last 2 years have definitely been a transformation. You know, I built my brand, Dr. Molly. Published a book. I started a company. But I got to this point where I'm like, I'm in these relationships. I'm in a relationship, out of relationship, in a relationship, out of relationship. And I'm like, I'm seeking fulfillment through achievement and through relationship, and I'm not finding it. So what else is there? Like, if I can't find it through relationships and through work, then where do I find fulfillment? And the universe usually gives you what you ask for. If you ask for a path, it will give you one, but you have to be very clear with what you want. So this path came to me through this very painful relationship. And you can't look at things bad. Like, I can't look at it as a negative experience, because even though there were parts of it that were negative, like the fact that I've been the fact that this direction is taking me to this place is like profound. So now, what you learn through Sadhguru is like, there's 5 precepts in inner engineering. And one of them is, you are not your body, you are not your mind, which is a very freeing concept, which basically helps you realize that there's something to you that is much greater than your body and your mind. And you don't have to be stuck in either of them. Like, you are much greater than your mind or your body. And then all the rules are my rules. I love this one because it basically keeps you on a straight and narrow path. It helps you realize parts of your life that are out of alignment. And then there's I am responsible for everything. And I've already been living this tenet because I read this book. I mean, first of all, if you believe in the law of attraction, or you believe in like extreme ownership by Jocko Willenick, a lot of people have the same story, which is like, if you just take total responsibility for your life, then you can't blame other people or be a victim. And if you can take it a step beyond that and say you're the creator of your life, right? So there's this concept in Sadhguru's work called "you're the mother of the world," and you can take this kind of 2 ways. One is, you can look at everyone as you, and you can also look at everything as part of you. And so when you look at it that way, you ask yourself, what would I do if this were me? What would I want how would I treat this person if they were me, or if they were my child? And then also this whole thing is like, we're creating everything as we interact with it. So like, how we treat something changes it, you know? So it's really important to like really look at yourself and look at those around you and ask yourself, are you creating this person into a monster? Or are you creating this person into like a teacher? And then there's this concept of like, there's only the present moment, or there's only now. And this is very like along the same lines of Eckhart Tolle, that there's only the present. Well, nobody actually knows what the present, past, or future are. But some people in spiritual, realms believe that there's only the present moment. If you actually ask a physicist, they don't believe the present exists. They believe the past and the future only exist. So like, nobody really knows. So I like take this one with a grain of salt. But fundamentally, the way that I see the world is that if you optimize your biology and your physical metabolic health, you have more energy. If you optimize your psychology and your relationships with your parents, your partners, yourself, you have greater psychology. You have greater connection. You have connection to you have connection to others. And that connection is either good or bad, and positive or negative, and it's either giving you life or it's taking life away from you. The third piece of the puzzle that I haven't really fully until now really fully understood, which is, there's something much greater than you. and there's something much bigger than us. And this concept of transcendence and quote unquote enlightenment is literally about how can I shine as much light and free up as much energy in my existence so that all of my interactions are coming from a place of total involvement and total connection, and like from a place of love, from a place of like peace and joy, and just feeling like I'm here with this person in front of me and they have divinity within them. And that's what you learn. You learn that there's divinity within every single person, within everything you put in your mouth. There's divinity everywhere. And so the question is how can you tap into that divinity through your daily existence? And that's where spiritual practices come in. And then the real question is, the real test of spirituality is how is your health affected by it, and how are your relationships affected by it? Because if your health is improving and your relationships are improving, then you can really see that your spiritual practices are like reaping real rewards. Like there's things that are, it's making your life better. That's the whole point of spiritual practices, is that your life improves, and that you don't have to be stuck in this delusion of a separate self, that you can be part of something greater than you.
I'm sure the teachings of Sadhguru are incredible, and like you said, like, you mentioned all those names that I have never, I don't know what they are, but I'm sure in between the breath work and the yoga and all that, you definitely can reach a state of constant, a kind of like a constant awakened state where you're full of energy.
The goal is to get there, but remember, like the work that you do, what I'm learning from Sadhguru is that there's all this energy you get produced, right? And then there's all this energy you direct towards your relationships and your work and your production of whatever it is your purpose is. But there's this chronic energy in you, this chi. And the whole point of his practices that he's trying to teach you are to actually organize that information, like organize that energy in a way that is stable, grounded, and connected to something bigger than you, so that it's not chaos. So, like, if you have a bunch of Kundalini energy released and you're like all over the place, like it's not organized energy, it's like chaotic energy. And that can actually be bad for your health. And people have had mental breakdowns because of Kundalini awakenings. Like, there is a belief in some of the woo woo Western, Eastern world that like a psychotic breakdown or like a mental health breakdown is actually a spiritual process of breakdown. Now, the way I kind of see it is that if you can do practices that can organize this energy within you and keep it structured and help it stay grounded, it's kind of like a lightning. Like if you ground energy, if you ground energy into the earth, it's not going to be like a live wire. Like there's a reason why we want to ground electrical lines in the earth, because if you don't, then you'll get electrocuted. So grounding energy and grounding electricity, like that's the key. So that's kind of why what I see his practice is doing for me is like, yes, of course you can talk about God and talk about source, you can talk about whatever it is that you believe is the higher power, or you can just look at it as like, this is energy hygiene that is particularly profoundly useful for becoming a happier human.
Right. I like all those practices. My only reservation with Sadhguru is that I saw him being a part of the World Economic Forum and talking about being pro diluting the world population. Now, I don't know if this is a real clip or it's an AI made. You never know. Like in this world, you don't know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, so I don't look at him as someone that I'm going to like say, I believe everything Sakura says. My ex-boyfriend was such a devotee of this man that he believed everything he had to say was true. And I was like, I hear Sakura talk a lot on these app. He has a great app that you can download. I don't believe everything he has to say. And actually, if you actually listen to him talk, he doesn't believe that you should believe everything he has to say. Like he's like, don't trust me. Go figure it out for yourself.
Maybe he's still in the truth.
That's what I like about him is like he's actually like I'm not going to tell you that everything I have to say is true. Like I think it's true, but that doesn't mean you have to believe in it. Now, Elon Musk and a lot of these PayPal mafia guys that I'm friends with, I wouldn't say I'm friends with Elon, but I've met him, and I'm friends with literally like a bunch of the PayPal mafia guys, like the people that are kind of running the show in Silicon Valley. A lot of these power players throughout the world, they do believe that we are running out of people and that we need to make more people. That we need to like we're having a population implosion. Like we're not exploding, we're imploding. Like there's plenty of people who believe that. And then there's Sadhguru and people like, oh, we're overpopulating the earth.
There's too many people. Let's get rid of some of them.
Nobody knows anything about any of this nonsense. Like nobody knows the answer to this. Nobody has any idea what the truth is when it comes to if humanity is destroying the earth or if humanity is like if we need to actually make a better like a greater humanity in the earth. Like nobody has any idea. But what I always kind of return to is what does nature tell us? Because we are part of nature. We have forgotten that we are part of nature. And like I'm a woman and like I think women are particularly like I'm getting chills when I just say this, but like we are entering an age of feminine power. And if you want to understand feminine power, you have to look at nature. So I get chills when I say this because like I am not a quote unquote feminist. Like I am not one of those women that's like I'm like a third wave, fourth wave feminist.
Feminine power is not being a feminist.
I am it's not about being a feminist. It's about looking at the natural order of existence and looking at like what does femininity look like in nature? The ocean is like deeply feminine, right? It is still some days and it is wild some days. It is cannot be controlled and it will nourish you and it can destroy you. Like look at a mama bear, right? Look at a mama bear in nature. Like if you get near that child, it will rip you to shreds. Like maternal energy is fierce and nurturing. Okay? Nature is fierce and nurturing. So when I look at nature and I see nature saying, okay, humans, you think that you have so much control over me? Guess what? At the end of the day, I will survive you. You might all die. I'm going to live on. I will live on beyond you and I will transform and I will change, but I will be here beyond your existence. That is something that is like, that is something I know for a fact. Like we may be gone in an instant as a human race, but nature will still be here. And nature and the patterns of creation, maintenance, and destruction are shown in every single cycle of a woman's egg, are shown in every single cycle of a woman's biology, are shown in every single cycle of the seasons. And so this is the nature of life. Nature is going to create, it's going to maintain, and it's going to destroy. And so when you look at it like that, you don't get to decide for nature what is right or wrong. And for humanity, because humanity is part of nature, you know? And this is actually part of like most religions, by the way. If you look at Buddhism and Hinduism and like all these religions have the same story, you know? Even Christianity, Revelations is all about destruction of humanity.
I like what you're doing with separating the guru from the method. Because as someone who's been through extremely long journey of self development, taking I don't know hundreds of seminars and rubbing shoulders with a lot of the the most famous self development gurus of this time, you have to be very discerning with everything. And I like what you're doing. You're listening to your body, you're listening to your own journey, you're seeing your reflection in the mirror, and she looks radiant, and like, okay, this is for me. Yet I don't like what he's saying when he's saying this and that. So that's great. And I think this type of discerning is very mature. It's like a lot of people are not mature enough, and they look at not because they're bad or good, that's because they just believe everybody that have a higher status than them, and whether it's a doctor or whether it's a famous actor or a famous guru.
One of the things that I've learned that I had my biggest learning from this relationship ending was I and many women and many people give away our power to someone else that we believe is more powerful than us because we don't recognize how powerful we are to begin with. And we think that someone else is meant to be the guide, someone else is meant to be the teacher, somebody else is meant to be the one to tell us how to live and what to do. But at the end of the day, like your job is to go out and try on different philosophies, different methods, different belief systems, different lifestyle habits. And your job is to find out what works for you. And what I've learned is that, like, okay, for example, I thought I must eat a high protein diet, I must eat a paleo diet to thrive. And you know what I learned? I can eat a vegetarian diet and not die. And it's also kind of nice to do a vegetarian diet once in a while. But I learned that through direct experience. Now, If I believed my own prescriptions and never tested them against myself, I would never learn anything new. So I really don't like it when people are dogmatic about anything in life. Like, your job is to like go out and run experiments and test and figure out what's going to work for you and your lifestyle and where you live. And right now, like, I'm living in a cabin in Jackson, Wyoming. This is not the same lifestyle I was living in Austin, Texas. I was going to the gym, I had a trainer, and I was building muscle. Out here, I was like, I'm doing a lot of cardio, I'm doing a lot of skiing, I'm doing a lot of like exercise that doesn't require me to eat as much protein, but certainly requires me to eat more carbs because I'm burning them more. So I'm adapting to my environment. This is the marker of human health. Can you adapt to a different diet and lifestyle and thrive? Like, I went into a totally different, I mean, this is what I've been searching for. And like, I love weight training, and I love eating protein, and I love the fact that like I'm super lean and I'm getting really good at skiing, and like a lighter body is actually faster on a ski right now. So like, lighter and leaner, fun. And guess what? I made an intention last year. I would like to lose 10 pounds effortlessly. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but it happened. And it happened on accident because I just got into a relationship and ended up starting to do skiing and outdoors activities and eating vegetarian for 4 months. And you know what? I lost the weight and I discovered I don't want to be that skinny. Like, it's cool, but I don't want to be that skinny all the time. So like, I love I love looking at nature. If you actually look at an animal and you look at its natural habitat and you look at like how is it thriving in nature, like, animals are going to move around to migrate in order to have different diets for different times of the year. So like, there's an elk refuge behind me, and the elk come here in the winter and they like eat all the buds off the trees and they like chill out, and this is where they live. And then they get lean and they burn off all their fat, and then they move to the summer and they move to different places, and they get fattened up. And so like, or like maybe they like, I don't know when they get fattened up, but they certainly are like, certainly, I don't know what they're doing and what they're eating, but there's not a lot to eat out here.
I wish there was an elk walking behind you on the window, being like,
Oh, there's so many actually. You just can't see them because there's a blizzard.
really? Oh, let's call in one. Come on, one. Show up. What is-
I actually, so funnily enough, I was a few weeks before my boyfriend and I broke up. The night before I left, actually, I was meditating in the bedroom, and I was meditating. There was all these elk in the distance, and I started meditating, connecting with the elk, and I was like, "Hey, I'd love to see you in the morning in the yard, in the backyard, while we go and get in the hot tub. I'd love to see you, and so come meet me in the morning." And oh my God, woke up in the morning, and there was all these elk right outside the hot tub. It was so insane. And I was like, oh my God, I called them in. And he goes, you didn't do that.
Of
And
course
I
you
was like,
did. Of course you
you don't
did. You
understand. I
did.
spoke to them.
100%. You
I
did it.
definitely
It's
talked to them last
amazing.
night.
I do the same. I do the same with a stray cat that we feed sometimes. I don't see him for a few days. I'm like, hey Toby, like, come on, we miss you. And then the next day he just shows up. I had a lot of animal communication happening lately. Like, I developed that skill. I don't know.
I've been doing that too. I have a book called Keeper of the Animals. It's about how do you connect with nature. And on my 40th birthday, I saw four eagles in a tree. And when I broke up with this guy, I saw a lone wolf. Literally, well, we broke up mutually, but I was moving out and there was this lone wolf in the distance wandering the elk refuge. And I was like, what? So, like, nature, every time you see an animal in nature, just Google on your phone spiritual meaning of this. And you often find yourself, right, with something that just gives you, like, wow, that feels really resonant right now with where I'm at, what I'm doing.
Yes, amazing. Um, wow, there's so many questions that I have for you, and so many things we didn't even tap into. Can you come back again? Like, really, like, you're just a fascinating human being.
I'm a weirdo for sure.
No, you're amazing, and if you're a weirdo, then I'm a weirdo too, and I'm in really good company.
Oh, thanks so much.
Let's talk a little bit about MDMA and how you heal people's sexual problems through that.
So I have a company called Adamo, and one of the reasons why we first started the company was there was this big psychedelic revolution happening. And I was like, oh my God, I want to be a part of this movement. And I was very quiet about a experience that had happened to me in my early 30s where I accidentally healed some sexual trauma by that was like in my body biologically. Like I had a lot of sexual dysfunction and I had problems with arousal, problems with like proper lubrication during sex. I had problems with orgasm, and I had pain. So there was a lot of sexual pain. And what happened is I used MDMA with a partner, and it unlocked a healing that I was not anticipating. I was just like, whoa, wait, I used to have all these problems sexually, and now I don't have all these problems. And what just happened to me? So I told all my friends about this, and they're like, you don't want to tell people that you were using illegal drugs. And I was like, well, this is like in my early 30s. And but it was way before this is even before the MAPS movement really took off. And I ended up working with MAPS at one of their conferences. I was like the doctor that was ensuring people were staying safe at the conference. And MAPS in the last decade has gotten to phase 3 clinical trials, and they may be getting MDMA approved in the next few years for PTSD. And so if you study MAPS research, you'll find that what they discovered was that you can heal social injury that gets baked into the nervous system as implicit memory that the experience is still happening. So when you have a memory of like, this problem is still here in my nervous system happening right now, you perceive threat as present moment fear. And that's where PTSD symptoms come in, is like a past experience never got filed properly in the explicit memory. So it's stuck in the implicit memory. And it's every time you get a trigger, you start to feel like that thing is happening again. So the number one cause of PTSD in clinical studies for MAPS is sexual trauma. So I started studying sexual dysfunction as a result of sexual trauma, and discovered that it turns out about 30% of women with sexual trauma develop PTSD, but 60 to 80% develop sexual dysfunction. So actually more women are developing problems with sexual experiences than are developing flashbacks or PTSD, right? So I didn't have PTSD, but I had a lot of sexual dysfunction. And when I used MDMA, what I believe happened was it took my nervous system from every time I encountered a sexual experience, it would get tense and freeze. And I just wouldn't be able to like have a proper, sexual connection. It took that memory of sexual trauma and it filed it properly in the explicit memory so that when I re-encountered sex, it was no longer threatening.
So sex was anchored in trauma and then it shifted that anchor. Got it.
Yes. Now, we developed a sex therapy that we wanted to eventually combine with MDMA once MDMA gets approved. But MDMA is going to take years to get approved. Like this, every year it's like, oh, next year it'll get approved, or next year it'll get approved. So we decided, well, you know what? Like we developed a cool sex therapy program called the Adama method. And it's basically sex education that you never got. So a lot of people like never got proper sex ed and never really learned how to have sex in a way that wasn't what they're seeing in porn. So a lot of people's sexual model is porn based, and it's very aggressive, very dominant submission based, and very much based on like being penetrated by a more dominant partner.
It's basically zero connection. It's nothing but the physical. It's nothing but it's so flat and it's so damaging, especially for young, I know that kids as young as, I don't know, 9, 8 are watching porn and I'm like, oh no, that sucks because it's very addictive and they don't know how to handle a partner. They don't know how to be in bed because there's only one way, and this is like this is the most like animalistic basic level of having sex, where sex can be so much more beautiful and deep and actually liberating.
Yes. So fundamentally, the way I see it is we didn't learn how to connect emotionally and intimately in a partnership. And one of the most interesting things about my previous relationship was how disinterested he was in my method that I was developing with Aaron and Saida. So like I kind of put the pieces together into a platform, but the fundamental core concepts in the platform are from Aaron Michael and Saida Desolé. So Aaron Michael has a platform that he's built around what's called suction sex. And Saida, she has built a platform around this concept of erotic individuation and sexual sovereignty. So she's got the psychosexual piece and he's got the somatic piece. And we had them come together and they kind of created a baby. And so the very beginning of the program is about really getting into your personal psychosexual development and then learning to actually have embodied consent for what you really want to experience in the bedroom, what you don't want to experience, so that you can actually communicate your needs properly. And then you go into actually learning how to have painless, very intimate, emotionally connected penetration. And this is not for just heterosexual couples. This is for homosexual couples, for gay couples, for any couple, trans, cis, lesbian, straight, gay. It's not about sexual orientation at all.
It's about sex is about connection. And when you don't have that connection, when you don't have the education, it can be actually sad, devastating, and people don't understand why they feel so empty and why there is always like something's missing, because if you don't have the healing and not only MDMA, sex itself can be a healing tool.
Sex itself can be a psychedelic experience.
So much.
When you get into what's called rhythmic entrainment, when your bodies are rhythmically entrained and your breath is entrained and your eyes are looking at one another, you are connecting in a way that can generate altered states of consciousness where the boundaries between you and the partner dissolve and you experience a state of merging and a state of becoming something greater than you. And so what we wanted to teach people was like, hey, do you want to learn how to have sex in a way that creates connection? Do you want to connect with yourself so that you're prepared to have connected sex with your partner? Do you want to integrate what you're learning into your body so that you no longer react to sex as threatening? And do you want to develop stronger bonds with your partner and yourself? And so we designed the Adamo method on the three drives of human love. One is the sex drive. One is the drive to have emotional intimacy or romantic connection, romantic love, and the drive to attach. So I wanted Aaron and Seda to literally design this method to actually address all three facets of love. So we're running our first clinical study. We're running our first cohort. We're going to run another cohort shortly after. We're gathering a lot of data, and this is going to be our first product we're going to be distributing to the world. But then what we're going to be doing is actually training licensed therapists and physicians to prescribe this as a therapeutic intervention. And then we're also going to be redesigning a course that I've created for my personal brand called Your Health Span Journey, and teaching people how to optimize their metabolic health. Because one of the biggest things that leads to premature death and disconnection is metabolic dysfunction. So a lot of people are like not aware that like if you have metabolic dysfunction, you can have sexual dysfunction. And if you have relationship problems, you can have metabolic problems. So we're really trying to tackle these two core pillars of health, which is energy and connection. And then from there, the third pillar that's probably going to emerge as like the next frontier is like, hey, so what happens if you have amazing amounts of energy and all these human capacities are unlocked? Like in the last decade, I literally go out and I learn to do new things that I had no idea I could do. Like I had no idea that I could do half the things I was able to do in the last few years. So I believe that when you optimize your relationships, when you optimize your human health and your energy metabolism, you get this human capacity unlocked. And that leads to greater sense of self-determination, greater sense of purpose, greater sense of wanting to be of service to something greater than yourself. And if you're doing the work on raising your consciousness, you can like literally propel yourself into a future you never knew was possible. So like basically I'm trying to like take all of my passions, put them into one platform, and then like educate the world on how to have, what is the science of human flourishing? Like what does it take to be a flourishing human? And like it's all rooted in science and nature.
Yeah, Molly, we need to have another discussion. This is not enough time. Not enough time.
I know.
Where can people find you and take the training?
So you can find me at www.drmolly.co. And then my Instagram is at drmolly.co. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn or Twitter at Molly Malloof, MD, Maloof. And so friend me on all the socials. And then my company is it's Adamo Bioscience, but it's Living Adamo. So LivingAdamo, livingadamo.com. and at Living Adamo on Instagram.
Wow, Dr. Molly, you're incredible, amazing,
Thank you for saying that.
phenomenal. I'm so great. I'm so great to see you the way you are, and just like watch from the side your incredible evolution and expansion of consciousness, and how like what a like powerhouse you are, bringing all this into the world. None like nobody can stop you.
You know what? The last relationship tried, and I definitely wouldn't let it happen. And now I'm like,
You needed something to push against so you can like.
you know what I needed? I needed the message from the universe like, are you really ready to step into your power? Because I'm going to give you a roadblock, and you're going to have to ask yourself, do you really want to just be at home doing like, or are you ready to like step into your full power? And I'm like,
Yeah, you should be very, very proud of yourself for taking the higher path, because it's really easy to just hide at home, but you're like,
but you know what? It's it's not. There's unfortunately like sometimes you just get handed things that the universe is like, hey, I got a plan for you, and you're just gonna have to go for it. Like, and I'm like, okay, universe, fine. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to be of service. Like I trust you, and so I'm in like a deep state of surrender at this point. It's wonderful.
amen, amen. Well, Dr. Mo, thank you so much, and thank you, listeners. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. This was awesome. And remember to optimize your relationships, optimize your metabolic health, do the work on raising your consciousness, trust and surrender to your guidance, inner guidance, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.